He said, so if you want to have a business that you love and you don't want to drive into the ground, it means no employees, or if you do have employees, you create a culture around autonomy.
Welcome, agency owners. Jason Swank here with another episode of the Smart Agency Podcast. I have a good, amazing agency owner on today who's going to talk about, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but
we'll find out.
We'll figure it out. But the really interesting part, I think, of having this gentleman on is he's built over $4 million agency with zero employees or very little employees. So welcome to the show, Nicholas.
Jason, I think this conversation was a long time coming. We were running in a bunch of circles similar for a lot of time now. So I'm just glad that we have this opportunity to jam on some stuff. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, tell us who you are, what you do.
Ooh, that's a loaded question to start with an, it's like, what do you do, Jason? Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm a horse jockey. That's what I tell people. I'm a big horse jockey.
You're about to fly a plane upside down with for your examination as well. So there's a bunch of stuff going on there. Back in 2008, I started playing on this platform called Facebook. Because someone told me if I wanted to have my own business, I needed an ebook and I needed to sell that ebook. And then I needed to send that ebook into a course and all this other fun stuff. So I'm like, I'm a good student. I'm just going to follow what they said. So I was too late to the Google AdWords game. And someone said, you need to drive traffic to your ebook landing page. So that's what I did. I started running ads on Facebook. And then very quickly through the circles I was running in, people started having a ton of questions about that. It's like, well, how do you run it? How do you do it? Will you teach me? And I said, well, I certainly don't know, but I could try. So I started teaching people, and then people just came back to me and said, you know what? I don't want to learn this. This is too hard. Could you just do it for me? And I'm like, I don't know, but I can give it a shot. And then the agency was born. So this is like 2008, 2009, in the early years of Facebook. I don't have the proof of this, but I tell people, and it's got to be true on some level, I was probably one of the first 100 advertisers on Facebook when it just came out in beta and they opened it up to the non-corporate people, like just the Joe Schmoes like me, started playing on the platform. And so since then, we've been running both a Meta agency and consultancy since 8, 9. We've had the good fortune of working with a lot of big names and brand names that if I mention them, everyone would know. But that's not what excites me. It's like it's working with the businesses that need to be heard and have now become brand names as a result of learning how to run paid media and traffic. So when I talk about agency, I run a paid media agency on the Meta platform, and we've just been there ever since 2008 and running hard, without stopping since then.
What did you charge your first client?
Oh, that's a good question. God, I don't remember exactly, but I'm going to guess because it just, if I think back to it, probably like $500 a month to run ads for them. And I thought if I can just get like 3 or 4, I've made it big. I'm killing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why the 500 number always comes up. That's what I did my first website at was 500. But you're a lot worse than me because my 500 was in 99. Yours was 500 in 2008.
So that's like 50,000 in 2008.
Yeah, that's right. That was huge amount of money. You probably just beat me by like $500 inflation rate. So
yeah, but everyone knows that feeling. Like when you start out, you're like, I will charge anything to anybody who's willing to pay me any money to just figure this whole thing out. So
exactly,
that was a start. But I will say this actually, Jason. Someone gave me the advice. I don't know who it was, so I can't give the credit. But I had someone gave me the advice of like, look, a lot of people will go out there and I get cold messages every single day from people who are like, oh, I run a video editing thing. Let me just do things for you for free or whatever. And so, the sentiment at the time was like, go get your first few clients and do it for free. And I thought, well, that doesn't really tee up what I want to do. So what if I did this? And instead I went up to clients, dream clients, if you will, or people that I wanted to work with. And I said, look, here's my fees. And I stated what my fees were, whether they were 500 or when things got better, I started charging more. But regardless, I said, these are my fees. But when I was starting out, I basically said, look, these are my fees, but only pay me after we get a result. And so I think there's an interesting like mind shift in that. Rather than going to someone and saying, I'm going to work for free in exchange for a testimonial or whatever, it cheapens and dampens your offer to your ideal prospect, which you don't want, because then word's going to get out to everybody. Oh, you could just bargain with them and they'll do it for free. And you just get a trade of testimonial. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to charge you what our fees are, but we're going to charge you after we get a result. And that's how our first few clients came on board. And then we were able to build and leverage from there.
I like that. And I was just chatting with someone a little while ago. It's like we constantly get those emails, right? Hey, I created a video for you. Do you want me to send it? I'm like, well, hey, dumbass, if you did create the video, you should have sent it already.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're just trying to like use your automation and do it. And you tell me if this would work on you. I know this would work on me.
Okay.
If I was trying to get your business, if I said, hey, Nicholas, I'm Jason. I was checking out your website. I noticed a couple little things. Here's one little thing I want you to do, and just provide advice to you. Send that video to you. Now, where most people mess up is they'll follow up with another email. Hey, did you see that video? Did you watch that video? Hey, did you watch that video? What if I sent you 10 videos, different videos, custom to you that provided value to you each time? Would that work?
Right. 100%. Yeah. At least to start a conversation. Like, yes. I don't know what would end with that, but it would definitely work to start a conversation. And then through that conversation, if you continue to provide great service, you'd have me as a client for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And I see so many people trying to do the shortcut.
Yeah.
And they're trying to skip the step versus the basics, right? Like that's the thing that I love about, what we did. This podcast has been almost 10 years old. And a lot of the stuff that we've covered on the show, almost all the stuff, honestly, is foundational stuff that still works.
Yeah.
Rather than hacks.
Which is the best part. Yeah. Well, I heard someone say, and I think that's a great point that you brought up there. And again, I wish I could give credit where credit's due. I just don't know where I heard it from. But they said strategies build businesses and tactics make sales. And yet everyone's looking for the tactics, which is a short-term play to get a sale and all the new like nuanced stuff that's going on. But if you have strategies, lifelong strategy, and again, I'm not going to name names here because I don't want to call people out or anything like that. But if you look at a lot of the like internet marketers, for example, that's kind of the space I grew up in. You have person A, example, who every 3 months reinvents themselves, say they're the new AI guy, now they're this guy, now they're this guy, now they're this, and like constantly in this like perpetual what's new and sell that, what's new and sell that, what's new and sell that. And again, because it's a tactics based business essentially. Do they do well? Sure, whatever. But then you have someone like, Dean Jackson, good friend of mine, love the dude. He talks about the 9 profit activators for the last 20 years. Every time you hear him talk, it's just 9 profit You want to build your business? 9 profit activators. You want to do that? And I just love and appreciate the consistency of strategies that truly build businesses versus just tactics that are short-term, wrong of the day, trying to capture, flashy attention. And I get it. We need to do that. But there's something to say about just going with the stuff that works irregardless of the times. I don't think there's enough of it.
Yeah. And I like Dean's stuff around milking the cow. I always kind of butcher it because people are like, Jason, you're talking about milking a cow? Like, how does that help the business?
The self-milking cow? Yeah.
The self-milking cow. Yes.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate it. And I feel that really applies to agency owners. And I'll get to the point in a second for people that don't know Dean Jackson is that I'm just talking about milking a cow. But the basic principle is, there's only certain things that a cow can do. He can produce milk, but that cow should not sell the milk. That cow should not make the cheese and then sell the cheese, right? So you got to figure out what is the only things in your agency that you can do. What is your milk? So I'm going to transition this and try to bring it back to some kind of sanity conversation that I kind of took us off into. So Nicholas, what is your milk in your agency?
Yeah. So where the biggest value that I could serve, and I'll say this, not like it's a good thing or a bad thing. I admittingly have backed myself into a bit of a corner. And what I mean by that is now when people want to work with us, there's an illusion, and we've spent the last couple of years deconstructing this a little bit and pushing it off, but there's an illusion that if you work with us, you work with Nick. And because we've done unintentionally built the brand around the personality of me and my IP and my knowledge. And so as a result, when people come work with us, they're like, oh, well, am I working with you or am I working with someone on your team or who am I working with? So we've had to like undo a lot of that over the last couple of years. But the milking cow portion of our business right now is let's call it the POV. I think that's what it is. It's my point of view on acquisition and how ads work. And that point of view is different than everybody else out there. And that point of view leads to strategies. And so where I shine is to be able to like look at a campaign, look at a client and say, okay, well, based on this and based on our frameworks that are proprietary to us and what's been working in the trenches for all the years, I can show you how to apply that framework in your business specifically, and then hand it off to our team to be able to execute on it. So whereas when I started, I was I was everything. I was the button pusher. I was running the ads myself. I was in the ads account manager. I was also business development and taking all my own sales calls. And I was HR working with this. And I was like, I had 1,000,001 hats on, realizing why the hell am I so stressed out? I thought this whole entrepreneur dream was supposed to make life easier, and not. And no, until you came into, understanding things like Dan Sullivan's unique ability principle, where you do what's unique to you and you hire everything else out and you delegate everything else out. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of entrepreneurs. I think it was Robert Kiyosaki back in the day said, if you want to be rich, be lazy. If you want to be wealthy, be incompetent. That doesn't make sense to me when I first heard it. I'm like, how does that even make any sense? But now I'm starting to recognize, that there's a certain things I can do, AKA what you're talking about, milking the cow, that like I can produce milk, but everything else, if I want real growth and I want real leverage, it has to happen outside of having people around me who can do their unique abilities that help get the milk and the cheese and all that other stuff out there.
There's a lot of, I just got back from our agency experience where we rent out this 100,000 acre ranch, have a bunch of agencies together where we ride horses and chase bison around, or hopefully they don't chase us. Right. And there was quite a bit of them that we were saying, you need to build a brand, not build the agency brand. And you kind of alluded to this a little bit, right? Where you kind of backwards your way into it of going, you built your brand, which I think is very smart. And that's actually what I recommend a lot of times. How were you able to let people know that when they engage with you, kind of like a VaynerMedia, right? Like Gary is not doing project management. He's not doing any strategy for you. I can promise you.
Wait a second.
He's not. He's not. Right. So
firing them then.
How did you get over that hump? Because there's a lot of people listening going, I'll build the brand of the agency, but not my personal brand. And I think that's a mistake because the personal brand will continue forever. Your other brand won't.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I flipped back and forth on this for a long time because originally it was all about, NicholasKuzmich.com. And again, there's benefit to building the brand because especially on social, my opinion is nobody wants to engage with the brand. They want to engage with a human being. That's why some of the biggest brands in the world are connected to individual human beings, whether that's Logan Paul and Prime, who's responsible for creating $1 billion energy drink.
Isn't that crazy? One person can take out Coca-Cola.
Yeah, and Gatorade and everybody else one person with a personal brand and an influence to that brand. And I actually saw a little case study on him where they were juxtaposing Prime and Gatorade. Like Gatorade's 800-pound gorilla back in the day with the energy drink stuff and whatever. And then Prime comes on the scene and you would look at the ads from Gatorade and they were static and dull and they're talking about the benefits and the sugar and this and whatever. And then they went over to Logan Paul and KSI, what they were doing with their ads. And it's all about personality and story arc and villains and picking comedy.
PC versus Mac. PC versus Mac guy. Remember that?
Yeah, that was a great commercial. But to that point, like that was another thing that I learned. I had the fortune of going to Ulu Saba, which is the private safari of Richard Branson. I don't know how they coaxed me into paying a stupid amount of money to sit there on a safari with him. And honestly, it was great. And you get to have breakfast with him and pick his brain, but his brain is so beyond mine that every time he spoke, it just kind of like flew over my head.
And you're like, what?
I was like, what?
Could you record it so you could go back and listen to it after?
Well, just like it so doesn't apply to me who has no employees and makes a few $1 million a year. But one thing he did show us, which I thought was fascinating and it stuck to me on a certain degree, was the idea of the brand. And so you have the person, Richard Branson, who has a big personal brand that's now connected to Virgin, right? And beyond that, another thing that I thought was fascinating is he doesn't actually own any of the Virgin entities. They're all license deals. So an airplane company will come and say, hey, we want an airplane company. So he'll let them use it. But he leverages, they have to pay him a royalty and a license fee to use Virgin on their airplanes, but he doesn't own it. So the perspective I got from that was Jesus, like he's built this brand, Virgin and Richard Branson, and now doesn't own any of the companies, but makes, I don't know how much, I'm going to make up a number. Billions. It's going to be inaccurate, but billions because of the brand. So, but I think, you know, to that degree, there has to be something intentional about it. Because when I look at my stuff too, back in the day, you know, as I started building the brand and building the company and starting having conversations with all these people who are selling and having big exits and stuff like that, I started to realize like nobody's going to necessarily want to buy nicholaskuzmich.com because that's my name, right? Unless they drag me into that acquisition and say, you still got to be the face and now an employee of my own brand. So I think there's something to say that the personal brand is you, because people like personality, and that personal brand kind of umbrellas other things, but simultaneously you also need to have the brand of the business in case that ever gets sold or acquired, or you want to license that out or whatever you want to do. So you kind of treat them separately, but we do need to realize that, yeah, in today's world, people follow human beings more than they do brands. And so that's why there's a need to have a personal brand to some degree if you're going to push anything.
I love that you used Gatorade as an example. So I went to a rival school from the University of Florida Gators, and they came up with Gatorade. I've never drank Gatorade ever since. Powerade. I guess I'll try Logan Paul's drink. I've never knew they had a drink.
But here's the crazy thing. Prime, like I one of our good friends, mutual good friends, Dan Martell, his kids are hooked on Prime. And I mean, it's like $4 or $5 a bottle, and they always got a bottle around. So I took one from one of his kids, and I'm like, what is the deal with this stuff? And so I look at it and I'm like, oh shoot, 0 sugar. Okay. Gatorade has like 45 grams of sugar. Their base is coconut water. I'm like, huh, interesting. Ooh. And I taste it, and the flavor profile is amazing.
Was it really? I've never tried it. I've never heard of it.
So it's an amazing drink with 0 sugar, coconut water base, and all the benefits of the antioxidants and the all the stuff that goes on into these kind of drinks. And it just blows like Gatorade, Powerade, all of these out of the water. And they've got the great story of those guys kind of running the brand behind it. So it's
Logan Paul with Prime, hit us up for endorsement.
Well, here's the crazy thing though. Logan doesn't even own Prime. So the creator of Prime had this no-name brand and was just like, how am I going to compete against the big dogs? There's no way. Struck a deal with Logan and KSI to own the majority of the profits. And so that just shows you the power of a personal brand. He is going to have $1 billion company that he doesn't even own, but just the royalties that he's connected to the brand rakes in. But again, the power of a personal brand. If you know how to play it, you can strike up deals like that and not even own it or run the operations or give a damn. You're just the mouthpiece. Yeah. So it's a powerful thing if you can figure it out.
Let's talk about kind of the no employees and all these contractors. Right. So there's a lot of people listening. They have big team. They have some team members, and they're like, man, this would be amazing to get rid of a lot of my headache. Can you tell them the grass is always greener on the side you water? Because I'm sure there's probably headaches. I don't know, but there's probably headaches on that part as well. And why did you set it up that way?
Yeah, I love that. So I met a guy who was closely associated with some individual who's actually nominated for a Nobel Prize for this thing he created. And it was basically his premise was that through a collection of proprietary like personality tests and whatnot, they can almost tell you exactly who you are and how you'd benefit most in functioning in life. Now, what his associate did was he took this understanding and he wanted to turn a business out of it. So he went into the sales play, and his basic thing when he went into any corporation is like, your best salespeople are born, they're not taught. And if I put every one of your salespeople through this personality thing, I could tell you who your top performers are even before you tell me anything about them, and I'll tell you who to fire. And this was his business now, whether he's working with real estate brokers to say, hey, before you hire a real estate agent on your team, put them through this profile test and I'll tell you whether or not they're going to be top 1% or not. And he goes, Nick, I need help marketing this. Can we talk? And I'm like, sure. And he goes, the best way for you to understand this is actually do the test. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll tell you, I'm not a salesperson. So like, I'll tell you in advance. But he's like, no, it has nothing to do with sales. That's the angle I took. But I want you to go through it so I can review your findings with you. Anyways, I did this thing. He spat out a 15 or 20 page result and he said, let's hop on a Zoom call. And in half an hour, I felt like this guy was psychic. Like he was speaking into my inner depths of my soul, revealing stuff that I didn't know how to articulate about what I knew to be true in life. And I was like, Jesus, this is intense. But here was the main takeaway. I won't give you all of them, but one of the main takeaways goes, Nick, if you want a good life and a good business, your number one value in all things, and this explains so much to me as a kid growing up and I couldn't figure out why. He said, Nick, your number one value is autonomy. And if you don't feed that value and build a life around that value, you will suffer the greatest frustration you will ever have in your life. And I know that to be true because when I was employees of companies or whatever, anytime someone would micromanage me or manage me to any degree, I'd freak the hell out. I'm an only child. I've never had siblings growing up around me. Like autonomy on my very core is in my DNA. So when he's telling me this, I'm like, my God. And he goes, and I'd already done this, but he just reaffirmed it. He said, so if you want to have a business that you love and you don't want to drive into the ground, it means no employees, or if you do have employees, you create a culture around autonomy. So you only hire people who know how to take initiative, who don't need daily team huddles, who don't need to be micromanaged because you hate doing that anyways. And so I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing already. But now I felt like I had permission to dive deep into that because everybody else is like, hire a team. Team culture is important. And I'm like, maybe for you, but not for my sanity. So we started to really dive deep into that. And in full transparency and admission, I think I dove so deep into that I didn't recognize simultaneously I was providing bad leadership, right? So there's such a thing to have autonomy and allow people the space to operate in the best capacity they have. But there's another thing to be so disconnected to them that you don't provide any form of leadership. And so I had to like bridge that gap, but that's how it came about. And I said, you know what, I can have employees, and I've had them in the past, and has provided such pressure and heartache and mind problems that I said, you know what, I'm going to go the other way. And so when we went through that hiring process, you know, a lot of it was, do we find people who are autonomous, who value autonomy as well, who can work, you know, based on very strong initiative characteristics? Can we do it so that they don't need to be micromanaged with huddles and all this kind of stuff? And when I did that, it worked out well. Now, does it have its downfalls? Of course it does. Because anyone who's considered a contractor, even if you're giving them full-time work, they always are looking for other clients on the side because they want to build some stuff. You know, contractors, oftentimes when they're around you long enough, they're like, well, I could do what he does. And they end up becoming your competition because they go out and start their own things. And so it's not better or worse. It's just what is right for you. And this was right for me. And I was always about a term called netting up. And I'll quickly tell you how I came across that term, and then I'll shut up here. But I was in this phase where everybody around me was reading Verne Harnish Scaling Up and talking about scale this, scale that. Everything meant graphs had to be up and to the right. And I was like, that all sounds great, but Jesus, that's not aligned with who I am. And so I was at the ClickBank conference in Denver speaking. And a good old friend of mine that I hadn't seen in years, Lo Silva, was there. He's like, hey, man, let's catch up. I'm like, hey, man, what's going on? And we were talking, and I explained to him, yeah, I don't think I'm scaling up. I'm scaling down. And he goes, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, here, I'm not losing any top-line revenue, but I have less employees. I'm doing less work. Like, I just want to focus in on the stuff that really matters. And he looks at me in the eyes, and he says, Nick, you're not scaling down. You're netting up. I was like, I've never heard that term before, and I'm running with it. And that was my theme for that year of like netting up to me is how do you make the net the same or higher with less effort, less work, less people, less everything else. And it's a forcing function to say, how can I create this in the best way possible? So when I started the agency and consultancy, it was always a lifestyle business. It was, how do we create something that pays for the lifestyle rather than, you know, a corporation that I'm going to one day sell? And I think a combination of all those things came together, which has now allowed us to have this business but on my terms, the way that I want it.
Well, and that's what I tell everybody. And that's why I think we get along so well. We believe in the same things, because a lot of times, I remember when I had the first agency, we would go to, Chamber of Commerce, because really social wasn't there. It was just like, we had to meet with people. And we'd go there, and like our posturing was, how many people do you have? Oh, he has 20. Oh, he has 100. Oh, 200. Right. And that's kind of the self-worth that we put onto it.
Right.
And then after I sold that agency and I was doing this, I was like, let's go ahead and design something around me. And also too, as we started, consulting with a lot of different agencies, I said to them, stop focusing on your top line revenue. It is irrelevant. Exactly. If you could actually go down in your top line revenue, but increase your net profit each and every year, wouldn't you be happy? And you can actually get more time back. And they're like, yeah, of course. So you can design all this. And then you got all these people out there, right? Like that go, oh, look at my lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. Like, and you and I have really good lifestyles. We've built really good businesses. But what people have not seen is the 80-hour weeks for years and years put into it to allow me to work 10 hours a week now.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to know that, like, when you hear, oh, Jason works 10 hours a week and, oh, it must be his systems and all that kind of stuff. It's all of the knowledge that we've gotten over the past 20 years that has taken us to get there. Look at the gray hair. I mean, you shave off your gray hair. You dye it?
I have it. No, but I have it on my head. It's terrible.
I just do it so I can charge more.
You can charge more. There's wisdom. You're paying for wisdom.
Right. If I shave it off, then it's baby face and big nose, and they're like, oh, I can't charge as much.
No, but I love how you said that, because like the question that I would ask you, because I know I've asked myself, is like, it took 10 years to get there. Could it have been faster? And the answer is like, no, because it took the 10 years to figure that out. Yeah. Right. So we can sit here all day long and talk about systems and how to put in the hours to work less, but like, there's no shortcut. You've just got to figure it out, and you've got to put in the time and the effort and the energy to be the person so that you're willing to accept what it takes to create a 10-hour work week. Yeah. And I don't know, but I haven't figured out the shortcut of that yet. I think it's just character building over time through the trenches that's going to lead to that.
Well, it's self-awareness. You have to be
right, sure.
And what I found over the years, and I was telling people at our experience today or last week, I was like, your business, when you felt like you've hit a plateau, it's because you've personally hit a plateau.
Yeah, right.
So, who do you need to become? Where do you need to go personally in order to bring that up or get out of the way of it? But like, if you understand, like, I'm the same way you are. I do not want to manage people. I want those self-managing people. I go, here's the outcome that I want. Go do it ethically and do it in a good way. Other than that, like, I don't have any say in like, you must do test 1, 2, 3, 4, right, and whatever. It just doesn't matter. I'm like, here's the outcome. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Go do it. Because if I have to manage someone, oh my gosh, like.
I think a great exercise for that, which you bring up, and there's two stories I want to tell real quick, is almost, I think the problem why a lot of agency owners or whatnot have a hard time doing that is because, just like me, I started as the skilled person. Like I had the skill, so I was doing the work.
Yep.
And so I know best. And then when it started time to hand it off, it's like, well, wait a second, I know how to do that better. That's what I'll be doing. So an interesting exercise that I've been doing as of late is, what if I started a business that I knew nothing about? Zero skill in the industry. How would I build that business? And the answer is completely different. It wouldn't be around me. It wouldn't be around how I could micromanage. It'd be around hiring really, really great people who can then execute the business. And I could just stay top level about like, oh, here's where I think we can go as the visionary, but there's no way for me to do any of it because I don't have the skill. So it's a forcing function to be like, wait a second. And a great example of this is when we were in Croatia, again, speaking of a good friend, Dan Martel, we were in Croatia and we were sitting at a restaurant and everything just moves slower in Europe, right? It's a 4-hour dinner when it could have been
very slow. It drove me crazy. I went to Rome. I about shot myself.
Yeah. but I get it. That, it's slow down and enjoy life or whatever.
But the New Yorker in me, I just, I stress out. I'm like, 4-hour dinner. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Toronto, so same sort of thing, like higher pace or whatever. Although I like living out west now, and I know you're in the quiet back country.
Yep.
But we were looking at the efficiency of this, and we're just looking at this, and Dan turns to me and is like, I could increase the productivity of this business probably 25 or 30%.
Of course, he would say that.
Yeah, of course. And I'm like, yeah, interesting, but you've got no restaurant experience. He goes, that's exactly why I could do it. Because all I would do is I'd walk around Croatia and find the most effective restaurant being run here. And then I would poach their manager and I'd bring him over to my thing and I'd charge him a lot more and say, hey, he comes with all the playbooks, all the understandings, all the staff, the 15 years of knowledge to make it work. And he's going to do it. And I'm just going to put the right players in place. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I never thought about it like that. And so my exercise of like going into, or at least imagining going into a business that I have no experience for, helps me to run this business way better, because now I'm detaching myself from saying, well, it has to be around me and my policies and my rules and my this. Yes, I come up with frameworks and I build strategies and that's what I'm good at. But anything outside of that, let's bring in the people who can make that happen. And I think a lot of people, including agency owners and anyone alike, could benefit from hiring someone who's in charge of building the business of me. Because the business of me, sometimes we have the skill set of what it takes to build that business, but sometimes we don't. And if we don't, and we're the visionary or the creator or whatever term you want to put on yourself, then having someone who understands how to build businesses and they're in charge of building the business of you, then you could just take a portion. They could take a portion. It's a big win for everybody, but you would reach heights that you would never be able to reach because you've now taken yourself out of the equation of the build.
Yeah, it's amazing the things between our ears, how they get in our way.
We can only solve that part.
Well, yeah. It's always a me thing, right? Like, it's like, one of the things I asked all our members to have their team answer, and it was really pretty cool. If you ask your team, what is 2 things that I should stop doing? What are 2 things I should start doing? And what are 2 things I should continue doing? You'll have such enlightenment for what you need to go do.
Right.
Because most of the time, in my case, mostly I'm the one in the way. When we sold the first agency, I was at my plateau of where I was there then. But if I look back now, what I know, I'm like, man, we could have built $100 million agency. Not easy, but easier.
Sure.
But it's where are you now? What do you want? And then build the business around you. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, obviously, you see what Nicholas has done. The business is built around what he wants rather than what the world thinks they want. And hopefully that's a big takeaway for everyone listening. This has been amazing. So thank you so much for coming on the show. What's the website people can go and check you out?
Well, the good thing is I'm the only Nicholas Kuzmic on the planet. So if you can figure out how to spell it. That's right. Yeah, it's easy to find me. But the problem with it is that not everyone knows how to spell it. But Kusmich, all the social channels are there. If you go to nicholaskuzmich.co, so .co instead of .com, you can get a free copy of my book there, get on my newsletter, see what we're up to and that sort of thing. But that's the best way to stay in touch and get some content from us.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. And everyone, make sure you subscribe on whatever platforms. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel. We're creating a ton of content. We've almost been doing this for 10 years. And thanks for, especially for all of you that have been listening to the podcast. We've grown to over 40,000 downloads per episode per month. So thank you so much for doing that. And just giving us your attention for almost a decade. And hopefully it's a decade more. And until next time, have a swank day.